The Last Star Academy. Episode 1. The Boy Beneath the Falling Star. The night Kael Rowan was born, a silver star split the sky above Brindle Hollow and turned every rooftop, river, and forest leaf into shining glass. The oldest villagers whispered that a child born beneath a true starfall would carry a star core, a power that awakened only once in 100 years. But by morning, the star was gone, Kael's mother had vanished, and fear had already wrapped itself around his name. The only thing left with the baby was a broken star-shaped mark glowing faintly beneath his collarbone. 12 years later, Kael lived in the attic of the old grain house, where rain tapped through the roof and dust covered everything he owned. He swept floors, carried water, chopped firewood, and ate whatever scraps the innkeeper forgot to throw away. Most people in Brindle Hollow looked through him as if he were part of the walls, except when strange things happened nearby. Lantern flames leaned toward him, locked doors clicked open beneath his fingers, and wounded birds stopped trembling when he held them. Every morning, Kael tied an old brown scarf around his neck to hide the broken star mark beneath his shirt. In the cracked mirror beside his bed, he saw messy black hair, silver-gray eyes, and a boy no one had ever chosen. He did not know why his chest sometimes warmed when the stars were bright. He only knew the villagers had taught him that anything strange about him should stay hidden. On the evening of the Harvest Moon Festival, Brindle Hollow filled with lanterns, music, and paper creatures swinging from strings above the streets. Children Kael's age ran through the square in colorful cloaks, pretending to be beast-bonded heroes from old legends. Kael watched from behind a stack of firewood, smiling quietly as glowing lantern fish floated over the crowd. For one moment, he almost stepped into the light. A boy from the village noticed him and laughed loudly enough for the others to turn. He asked whether forgotten attic rats were allowed at festivals, and the children around him burst into cruel laughter. Kael lowered his head, pulled his scarf higher, and walked away before anyone could see the hurt on his face. Behind him, the festival music continued as if nothing important had happened. Kael followed a narrow trail toward the Whispering Fields, where tall blue grass moved like waves beneath the moon. The village lights faded behind him until the only sound left was wind sliding through the field. Above the clouds, the first falling star of the night streaked across the sky in a silver arc. The broken star mark beneath Kael's scarf suddenly burned with a light so sharp that he fell to one knee. A glowing envelope descended from the sky, spinning gently like a feather caught in moonlight. It landed at Kael's feet without making a sound, sealed with a symbol of a crescent star wrapped around a winged tree. On the front, written in shining ink, were the words, Kael Rowan, accepted into the Last Star Academy. Gifted companion assigned by the Academy. Luma, moon-feathered fox dragon. Kael stared at the letter with shaking hands, unable to believe that any academy would ever choose him, much less send him a magical companion. The grass beside him rustled, and a small creature tumbled out nose first into the dirt. It looked like a fox no bigger than a housecat, but moon-white feathers covered its neck, tiny wings trembled on its back, and its long tail glowed blue at the tip. The creature shook dust from its fur, looked up with bright sapphire eyes, and sneezed a tiny spark of silver light. Kael looked from the letter to the creature, and only then did he understand why the name Luma had already been waiting for him on the page. Kael reached out slowly, and Luma stepped closer instead of running away. For the first time in his life, something magical looked at him without fear. But then Luma's glowing tail flared brighter, and the entire field went silent. The crickets stopped, the wind froze, and the blue grass bent away from the old road. A tall figure in a dark traveling cloak stepped from the shadows, wearing a smooth ivory mask with no expression. The masked stranger lifted one gloved hand, and black thorn like magic crawled across the ground toward Kael's feet. Kael stumbled backward, clutching the glowing letter against his chest while Luma bared its tiny teeth. The stranger did not speak, but the darkness around him felt hungry. Kael ran through the whispering fields with Luma bounding beside him. The black thorns snapped at their heels, cutting through grass and turning flowers to ash. When one thorn lunged toward Luma, Kael reached out without thinking and shouted her name. Silver light burst from the broken star mark on his chest, forming a shield of fractured starlight between Luma and the attack. The dark thorns shattered against the shield, scattering into sparks across the field. The masked stranger froze, and for one terrible second, the figure seemed more surprised than angry. A low voice whispered from behind the mask, saying that the forbidden core had survived. Kael did not understand those words, but Luma's frightened eyes told him they mattered. A second star fell from the sky, larger and brighter than the first, and struck the hill beyond the fields without fire or thunder. Instead of destroying the land, it opened into a path of floating stone steps rising into the clouds. At the top of the glowing path, Kael saw towers, bridges, gardens, and lantern-lit windows hidden behind curtains of silver mist. The last Star Academy had appeared. At the bottom of the star path stood a woman in a deep violet coat, her silver braids moving as if underwater. She raised a crystal staff and struck the ground once, causing the remaining black thorns to explode into harmless sparks. She called Kael by name and told him that if he stepped onto the path, the academy would protect him. Then she warned him that if he stayed in Brindle Hollow, the hollow mask would not let him see another sunrise. Kael looked back toward the village, where the festival lights still flickered in the distance. No one was searching for him, and no one even knew he was being hunted. That truth hurt worse than the dark magic, because it proved how completely the village had forgotten him. Then Luma pressed her small feathered head against his ankle, trembling but refusing to leave. Kael stepped onto the first floating stone, and the world below dropped away. Wind rushed around him as the path lifted into the night sky, carrying him higher with every step. The masked stranger reached the base of the hill too late and raised one hand toward him through the mist. The gesture was not a threat, and somehow that made it even more frightening. The academy gates opened above the clouds, revealing a courtyard paved with dark blue stone and glowing star patterns. Students in colorful jackets rushed past with magical creatures beside them, crystal-backed turtles, ember-tailed cats, and floating fish with translucent wings. Kael clutched his worn scarf, suddenly aware of his patched clothes and muddy boots. Luma puffed out her tiny chest as if trying to look brave for both of them. Inside the central hall, a massive crystal sphere hovered above a fountain of silver water. Its light pulsed weakly, like a tired heartbeat struggling to stay alive. The woman in violet introduced herself as Headmistress Vaelora and explained that the Academy's ancient star core protected magical creatures and their bonded students. But now that ancient power was fading, and only children with rare awakened cores could help restore it. Students gathered around Kael, whispering about the attic boy from Brindle Hollow and the strange moon-feathered fox dragon at his side. Some looked curious, others doubtful, and one silver-haired student with sharp golden eyes watched him like he was a problem waiting to happen. Kael wanted to disappear into his scarf, but Luma climbed onto his shoulder and wrapped her glowing tail around his neck. For the first time in his life, someone stood with him instead of leaving him behind. Headmistress Vaelora placed her hand above Kael's chest, and the broken star mark burned through the fabric of his shirt. The hovering crystal sphere flashed bright silver, then deep red, then a color darker than night. Every student fell silent, and even the magical creatures backed away from him. Vaelora's calm expression cracked with fear as the hall began to tremble. She looked directly into Kael's silver-gray eyes and whispered that his star core was not weak. The fountain water rose into the air, Luma spread her tiny wings, and the shadows beneath the crystal sphere twisted like living things. Then Headmistress Vaelora said the words that changed Kael's life forever. His star core was forbidden. If you want to follow Kael and Luma into the secrets of the Last Star Academy, please like, share, and subscribe for the next episode.